Hey guys, what's up? That's right, I am back with a new video. I have my face pretty much on. I've got my foundation, some contour, some eyebrows, some lips even. We're gonna focus this video more on my eyes. And in my last video, you'll probably remember that I had mentioned that the brand Glaminatrix Cosmetics had reached out to me. They wanted to send me their new eyeshadow palette. And this is the You Beauty palette. You guys have probably seen this all over Instagram already. There's probably even some YouTube videos on this palette already. They did send out a bunch of palettes as PR, and I was lucky enough to get one. Glaminatrix is an Australian indie brand. I've actually been following them for a while and hadn't actually bought anything. They did reach out to me and wanted to send me this palette. And then after they did that, I went ahead onto their website and purchased a few things. I had gotten a couple of different eyeshadows. I got a pressed glitter that I did use in my last video. And then, was kind of playing around with those while I was waiting for this palette to arrive. This has already gone through 2 pre-orders and they are getting ready to do a 3rd pre-order. I'll leave some of the information maybe here on the screen or down in the description box below. But I think that they maybe said that they were waiting on the packaging, so there will be a 3rd pre-order. But again, I was lucky enough to get my hands on this. They did send this as PR. They are not paying me to make this video. They did not ask me to make this video. I have used this palette 2 other times. I really did want to get a chance to play around with it off camera and form some opinions before I came here on camera to play around with it for you guys. So I actually have played with this palette twice. There is just a picture on my Instagram where I did use this for the first time and came up with a look. I also did use this just a few days ago and created another look, which I wasn't super happy with. So I actually scrapped all the photos and all of that. But before I get into playing around with this palette today, just a little bit of information. This is a 12-pan palette. This has, let me look at my notes here. This has 7 matte pigments. It's got 3 multi-chromes and 2 duochromes. This also retails for 95 Australian dollars. So it's a really pricey palette. But again, when you're getting into indie brands tend to cost a little bit more anyway. And then as far as multi-chromes go, those are really expensive on their own. So when you're putting 3 multi-chromes and 2 duochromes into a palette, that's already going to hike the price up. And then with all the mattes on top of that, it's a really expensive palette. And this does have a really interesting color story. It definitely has kind of like some grungier tones going on. Something that the company did do is that there was some feedback as far as this brown up here in the corner. This is called Stitch Up, where on deeper skin tones, this shade just wasn't deep enough to really create any kind of dimension or darkness on a deeper skin tone. So if you wanted to swap out that shade for their single in, let me look at my notes, in the shade Bittersweet, which is a deeper shade. But I do think it's really cool that they did that and that is an option, because I don't see a lot of brands doing that. I'm gonna set down a little bit of powder today on my eyes before I even put a primer on. Now I have noticed lately, I've talked about this several times before, but I have really oily skin and I have hooded lids. This eye in particular, I've got some folding starting to happen. Not even starting, it's been happening for a while. But I've got a little bit of a fold right here on this eyelid. And I have noticed a lot lately that I do get some creasing, especially on this eye, with a lot of different brands and a lot of different shadows. And it doesn't really seem to matter what I use as a primer. It's just kind of become an issue lately. So what I'm doing before I even lay a primer down is I'm just setting my lids and the under eye here with a little bit of powder, just to help maybe stop some of the oil from coming through and creating some creasing. Then I'm gonna use just a small amount of the Urban Decay primer potion. This is in the shade Eden. I have noticed also that if I use too much primer, if I go too heavy with this, that it definitely ends up creating some creasing no matter which eyeshadow brand or formula or whatever that I use. So just a tiny bit of that, and then go ahead and blend that out. And I take that primer also on my lower lash line, because I find that if I don't, even if I pack the shadow in like really heavy on my lower lash line, all of those little fine lines that happen like right here, like at your lash line, any kind of eyeshadow will get just kind of like bunchy and creasy and just kind of look gross throughout the day. But that's what I've got laid down as primer. And then we can go ahead and jump into using this palette. Now, the names of all of these shades are references to Australian slang, and they actually send this card with your palette, and it has the meanings for all of the shade names on this card here, which I think is really cool. But when I did first use this palette, I used the shades She'll Be Right, Stitch Up, and G'day, and this is probably my favorite shade in the entire palette. It's pretty fucking sweet. I need to set down some powder under my eyes too to catch fallout, because there's probably going to be some, and pop that under there. And you know what? I actually need to just pop a little bit of powder down onto my nose, because I already have some grease starting to come through. I didn't use the shade Budgie Smugglers yet, so I do want to use that one today. It's this red shade right here. I'm just going to press my brush into that a little bit. There is a ton of kick up in this palette, so keep that in mind. It's definitely very powdery. I'm just gonna kind of build that up in my crease, and as almost like a transition kind of shade. I might go in with a little bit of the yellow shade, but I'm not sure yet. So in playing around with this palette, the thing that I did notice right away is that it's almost very mid-tone across the board. I mean, there are a few lighter pops, and so you do get like inner corner highlight, brow bone highlight, something to add a lot of brightness and light to like the center of the lid. I've even used the shade Flaming Gala as a highlighter on my face, and I really like that. But as far as deeper tones go, now, like I said, there is the option to swap out the shade Stitch Up for a deeper single shadow to pop into this palette. But even for somebody who is like almost the color of paper like myself, I found the shade Stitch Up to be very light. Not light, but it's definitely like a mid-tone color. There's not a lot of depth there. And so for me, I find that this is really gonna be a companion palette, even though there are a lot of different kind of like colors and tones in this. I don't find that it's a complete palette, because again, other than the lighter highlight tones that are in here, I find that the rest of this palette is just very mid-tone. There's not a lot going on in there to add any depth to a look, even for someone with a lighter complexion. So I could see how it would be a problem for someone who has a deeper skin tone. I don't know, I'm liking this shade so far. This is almost kind of like a tomatoey kind kind of red, and I don't have anything else like this shade in my collection, so that's definitely an interesting one there. It is building up quite nice. It doesn't seem like it's getting too patchy or anything. So far, so good on this one here. And then I'm going to take a smaller brush. This is a Morphe M507. I'm going to dip into that same shade and then start to smoke that out along the lower lash line. Yeah, I probably could have used a smaller brush even than this one, because as you can see, I already have almost like a blob of shadow right there. But that's okay. We'll go ahead and smoke that out even lower, because you guys know that I do not mind at all looking like a raccoon. In fact, that's kind of how I prefer to wear my eyeshadow. Yeah, I think that a color like this actually really looks cool with my eye color. It definitely makes my eyes pop. I'm sure that I've said this here on my channel before, but I always hated my eye color. I always wanted brown eyes. I just think that brown eyes are the prettiest. And it's funny because I feel like people with brown eyes always wish that they had like green or blue or gray or something. I even wore brown contacts for a few years there, but I ended up stopping because they just looked really fake and they make the eyes look really odd, because the green of my eyes would show through the brown lenses and they just looked super odd and they looked creepy and they just looked really fake. So now I'm gonna go into the shade Stitch Up, which again is like the darkest brown in this palette. And when I used this the first time, I noticed that even for me, again, it just wasn't really quite enough to make any real kind of like depth happen. You see, it really is kind of on the same level of darkness as this red shade here. So I don't know that it's gonna really do a whole lot, except for give like a little bit of like color variation there, but I don't think it's going to give me much dimension. And again, not every eyeshadow palette can be a complete palette. You know, sometimes they're a companion, but when I'm using this, I do find myself wanting to reach for something else, just for those kind of like anchoring colors, you know what I mean? All right, so as far as the more shimmery tones in this palette goes, there's the blue, Straya. There is Chalkers, which is, I haven't even finger swatched this one yet. It looks like a lavender in the pan. Yeah, and it's pretty much a lavender, like a cool tone lavender on my finger here. There is the shade Old Mate, which I did use the other day, but with the look that I did, I just really hated the whole thing and I scrapped the whole thing. But this is like a nice old gold kind of color, and I really do love this. I think it's pretty. There is the shade Whoop Whoop, which actually mine came a little bit broken, which the company did address on their Instagram. They said that a lot of people were getting their palettes with either Whoop Whoop or Straya broken, and mine was. I was able to easily just press it back down and it was fine, but that's what this one looks like. I have used the shade Flaming Gala a few times and I really like this one. This has that like greeny gold with a pink shift to it. I don't know how much of that is going to read here on camera, but in real life, I see a really strong pink shift to that color. And I really like this one as a face highlight for me, and on the inner corner. So I have used that one a couple of times and I really like that one. And then what I really think is the star of the show here is the shade G'day. And I'll go ahead and finger swatch that one for you. This is just like a really interesting multi-chrome. It's almost like a greeny blue with like a peachy pinky yellow. Like I've never seen anything like this one before, and I really do like that one a lot. So I think what I might do, because Good Day on the lid, it actually looks really bright and it can look really light because of like the lighter shift to it. So I think that what I might do is pop Old Mate on, maybe on like the outer and inner corners, and then go in with Good Day just kind of like in the center, just for like that pop in the center of the lid. Now I am gonna use the NYX glitter primer. Now back to what I said earlier about like my oily lids and then the folding that I definitely have going on this lid. Now a shade like this, I'm always gonna lay down over top of a glitter primer because it just really enhances those kind of colors, right? Now what I noticed was I was completely finished with my makeup. I was getting ready to take some pictures and I'm like, is that creased up already? And it was. It was definitely, and that was over top of a glitter primer, which is normally gonna keep your shit in place a lot longer than a traditional eyeshadow primer, right? And I mean, it really was. By the time that I was done getting all of my makeup put on, I mean, it hadn't even fully been, like the eyeshadow had maybe been on for about 15, 20 minutes, and it was falling apart already. I did get some good pictures out of it. And you know, it did look really cool, but that definitely was something to note, which is again why I did decide today that I wanted to lay down a little bit of powder even before I got my regular eyeshadow primer on, just to see if the powder being laid down first would help the longevity of this look. So once I get done with everything today, I'm gonna get in there really close so we can see if anything has fallen apart or broken down. And then I also want to wear this, you know, throughout the day today. This is my day off, and just see like how long did this stuff really last for. I'm gonna go in with Old Mate first, and I'm just going to kind of pop that out here on the outer corner. Pop a little bit on the inner corner. I'm gonna take a brush actually and just kind of almost blend a little bit up into this area here. Then go into G'day here and then hit that right in the very center of the lid, just to make that pop right there in the middle. That's such a good fucking color, and I really like that pressed over top of that green. I just think it's a really good combination there. Let me go ahead and do the same really quickly on the other eye. You know what? I think that I want to go ahead and pop some of that on the lower lash line as well. Lay down some of that glitter primer first. And I think for the lower lash line, I'm actually going to go in with a brush just so I don't create a giant mess with my fingers, you know. Old Mate on the outer corners. And then G'day right there in the middle. Yeah, now both the mattes and the shimmer shades have a fuck ton of fallout. So definitely make sure that you're laying down a lot of powder first to catch that fallout, or that you do your eyes first and then wipe away your fallout and then go ahead and do your base and all that stuff. So then I am going to take the shade Flaming Gala. And what does that mean? That means someone who is a bit of a fool. I am going to take that shade on a little pencil brush, and I'm gonna pop that on the inner corners. Now, what I did find with this is that because often I will, for like an inner corner highlight to really make it pop, I'll actually lay some of the glitter primer down in that area as well. And doing that with this shade, it just made it look really chunky. And so I ended up having to kind of like take a Q-tip and wiping that area down, and then just going back in and just kind of laying this over top of, you know, my regular primer or whatever it is I had there in the center there. But this shade, I just think it's really fucking pretty. This one is great on the inner corners. This one is great as a brow bone highlight. And again, I have used this as a face highlighter as well, which I am also going to do today. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm pretty much just going to get some waterline eyeliner. I'm gonna put some mascara on, and that will pretty much be the end of this look, and we can get in there and take a look and see if any of the shadow did kind of break up on the eyelid. And then we can also take a look and see what it looks like later on today. Okay, so we've got some liner on the waterline, mascara, some lip gloss on, and this eyeshadow palette is trying to make me look like a liar because there is absolutely no creasing happening yet. But again, I did use some powder on my eyelids before I even put on a primer today. So it's probably just a me thing with the oily lids, with the creasy, crepey eyelid shit that's going on. So I probably just need to alter and adjust what I'm doing to prime my eyes before eye makeup. But I am going to check in a little bit later on and probably just insert some footage and show you guys what things are looking like several hours later. You're probably looking at that right now. Okay, so here we are about 4 hours in, and everything is actually still looking really good. I really think that what's going on is that I need to properly prime my eyes, definitely with some powder before I even go in with my eyeshadow primer. But we'll go ahead and see what things are looking like in a few more hours and see if things have broken down. But so far, everything's looking really good. If you do want to see the other look that I created, go ahead and check out my Instagram if you're not following me over there already. And I do want to go back in and use the more like blue, green, yellow, those kind of tones in this palette. Push myself outside of my comfort zone. Again, the look that I did a few days ago that I scrapped, it looked like fucking garbage. It looked really, really bad. And that might have just been me going into it already knowing that I don't like those kind of colors, you know what I mean? It could have been that. So I do want to give those colors a try again, but I do think that this looks really cool. It is a really pricey item, so if you're into it, if you want to try it out, I say definitely go for it, especially because there are so many different kinds of, you know, there's mattes, there's duochromes, there's multi-chromes, there's warm tones, there's cool tones. But again, I definitely wouldn't call this a complete palette. It's definitely a companion palette. But what do you think? Let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you sometime.